Today I'm going to talk about the cheapest Lexus, the Lexus IS250. Is it a good car or not? Now this is a 2015 IS250, and yes, it has that huge scowling grille. I personally find them absurd looking. Aside from the looks, which frankly you don't see most of the time you're driving a car, you're looking out the front. You can't even see the front of the car. So, what are these lowest price IS250s really like as a car? To begin with, hey, look, they're still made in Japan. So yes, they're solidly built, and under the hood, we take off this plastic crap, and there's a 2.5 liter V6 engine. This one is a 2015. It has 204 horsepower. Not racing standards, but plenty of power. In normal driving, this thing's got plenty of pickup. And what I like about it, it's a solid built Lexus V6 with timing chain, no sense to mess around with plastic and rubber timing belts. It's also normally aspirated. It's not turbocharged, so you don't have to worry about the turbocharger braking, and of course there's less wear on the engine. And sure, the newer ones, you can get one of those 4-cylinder turbocharged jobs that puts out more horsepower, but this plain old V6 engine, gonna outlast those things. And it's a typical Lexus, got a nice leather interior. This one's a little messed up because it's been in a flood, so all the mats are gone. But the interior is nice. Got a big old back seat and a huge trunk that just goes back in forever. Now these 250s are made as a sportier car. A little bit tighter handling than the bigger Lexus. Sure, it doesn't ride as smooth as my wife's old ES300, which has a much cushier ride, but that's not what it was made for. Even when you look at the styling, you can see the styling's even more aggressive. It does have a decent ride. It's not a horrible ride. It's just tighter, so it handles quicker. And it's got all the bells and whistles. You can go eco, normal, sport, even has the snow button. So if you're in the snow, it'll stay in a certain gear longer, so it won't slip when you're taking off in the snow. The electronically controlled transmission, you can do paddle shifting if you want, down and up. But of course, most you want to know, hey, do they hold up? Well, yes, they do hold up. They're well-made Lexus vehicles. It's not like they're cheaper made. They're just the lowest price one that you can buy. And in that respect, hey, for me, cheap Scotty, they're still too expensive new. So if I bought one, I'd do just like my wife's ES300 that I bought. I would buy one of these used in a heartbeat if it was taken care of. As far as I'm concerned, it's a further refinement of Lexus' original idea, where they sent some Japanese dudes to California, where they studied Americans and saw what kind of a luxury car do Americans want. Well, they realized that, yeah, big V8 one, ride smooth, huh? But now, they got sporty ones with 6-cylinder engines. If you're only going to be cruising around 75, 85, here in Texas, there's roads that have speed limits of 85, car's going to have no problem at all. But if you're on a pinch and you got to get out of the way, step on the gas, it takes off really quickly. And as I said, it does it with a normal engine. It doesn't have to use the trickery of gasoline direct injection. It's just a normal fuel-injected V6. And what's really cool about it is, it's rear-wheel drive, a classic driver's car. Go under here, there's the rear end, axles go to the back wheels. It's a serious driver's car. Man, now they're making even fancier ones. They got V8 engines in them, they're absolute screamers. Even with this V6, this thing's plenty quick enough, and it's a joy to drive. But with none of the headaches of an advanced V8 engine, where everything's hard to work on. This baby, everything's out in the open. It's easy to work on, and of course it's got the modern conveniences. Down here you can see there's the electric motor. It's got electronic power assist that allows you to drive it either conservatively or in sport mode. So it's like having more than one car. If you're rather conservative driving around, you want to get serious, push the sport mode, you can have a much tighter steering experience. The push of a button. But being a typical Lexus, they're well built. They rarely break down. So you don't have to worry about that system breaking down like you do with a lot of other manufacturers. You can see this one's been wrecked. That's just primer paints. And they cut and bolted it on. You can see it's been sprayed over after it's been fixed, but this one took the wreck, drives like a dream still. So they're solid enough. You can crumple the front end, rebuild them, and they still work great. Don't try that with, say, a GM vehicle. I had a customer with an Impel have a wreck like that. The insurance company fixed it. The car was never the same. It didn't handle right. It rattled. It had leaks. These things, they're getting wrecks You can actually fix them and put them back on the road. People are always looking for cheaper used SUV. Here's an 04 Explorer. It was $1,500. Is it worth it? Is it a pile of junk? Or is it in between? We're gonna find out. Okay, we'll start by looking at it. It's reasonably good here. Of course, the paint's faded away. Well, what do you want for $1,500? It's got the 4-door. Tires are still good. Got a tow hitch. But when we come to this side, it's got a pretty serious bash here. Not in the greatest of shape. Really got whacked here. Well, it looks bad, but the frame or anything wasn't bent because it goes straight down the highway and doesn't wobble all over the place. So that's a good thing. That's one of the reasons that it only went for $1,500. Now, sometimes these can be decent vehicles. If you check under the hood, if the hood supports hold up, it might whack me in the head. I think I'll get a stick. Just like the Boy Scouts, my motto, be prepared. Now, as we look inside, it's got the Ford venerable 6-cylinder engine. Got a timing chain in it. It's a pretty reliable engine. And as we go inside, the interior is a little worn, but I mean, what do you want for $1,500? The seat's still comfortable. Now, it does have 250,000 miles on it. Let's see how it starts up. Starts up okay. Let's check the AC. Hey, it's still blowing cold, but it does have various lights on. The ABS, seatbelt system, and the service engine light on. So let's get out the old scan tool. Let's see what it says. Well, it may be old, but it still reads the VIN number. And while we're waiting, you notice the AC doesn't work on 1, 2, 3, but it does work on 4. That generally means it needs a new blower resistor. They're not that expensive. But now we'll look at the data. Here we go. It knows what engine it is. We'll wait till it loads, and then we will check the codes. And here we go. It's scanning the codes. All right, it's got 2 trouble codes for the PCM and 1 for the ABS. We'll check the ABS because we really don't care that much about it on an old car like this. Read codes. Pretty cut and dry. Missing right rear wheel speed sensor input and left rear. So who cares? It probably doesn't work anyways, even if you did put sensors on it. What we really want to check is the powertrain control module problems. Let's see what those codes are. Read codes. And what do we have? EGR insufficient flow and a cruise control function. That's anti-pollution stuff. Not all that big of a deal, really. So I'm going to analyze the live data. That's really important on this old thing. Live data. Here we go. On this old thing, it's really important. We're looking for orange colors that are really bad data and any data that looks a little strange. We'll start looking through this. So far, everything seems pretty good. Even on this old thing, it may be 17 years old. You still get a lot of data. Good thing it shows no misfire currently detected. The data so far is pretty good for an old thing with 250,000 miles on it. Bunch of no faults, that's good. Now the injectors have faults. And as you can see here, the long-term fuel trim on bank 1, it's a V6 engine, so there's bank 1 and bank 2. It's adding a little bit of fuel, 1.56, sometimes a little bit less. But when we look at long-term fuel trim on bank 2, the other bank, it's higher. As you can see, it's going 4.29, sometimes a little bit higher than that. So you can see this one is adding a little bit more fuel. Now, if this was a Toyota or a Honda, it'd mean something, that there's something relatively big going wrong. But this is a Ford with 250,000 miles on it. I see this all the time. It's not going to idle perfectly, but it's good enough for this old thing. So let's keep looking on other data. Yeah, it's not going to idle perfectly, but what the heck. Now, just out of curiosity, let's check the max airflow sensor. You want it in drive, idling with the air conditioning turned off. Now, in this case, it's a little bit high. This is a 4-liter engine. It should be closer to 4 grams per second. The mass airflow sensor on this thing probably needs replacing. But they don't cost all that much. AutoZone, you get one for less than $100. They're not that expensive. So let's read on, see if anything else is weird. Sure, we haven't seen any orange stuff. Now you can see this is incorrect. Both oxygen sensors are staying lean. They're not going rich, lean, rich, lean. So this thing is running too lean. That could be fixed by a new mass airflow sensor and maybe power cleaning the fuel injectors. Not a deal beater. But it should be going rich, lean, and it's staying lean, which means it is running lean. But as we go on, there's no orange stuff. There's nothing that's totally bad. Transmission doesn't have any codes. So let's take it for a road test. But before we do, You can hear a little clicking. That's fuel injectors clicking. No big deal. The engine actually sounds quite solid. They'll often click with age as long as they run. There were no trouble codes for any of the 6 injectors, so they're working okay. Now we're gonna go down the road. Actually, it idles smooth as silk. And it takes off, not all that badly, really. Shifts smoothly. We'll take it on the highway. Now we'll get on the highway here. Decent acceleration. And look, even though it's got that big bash in the side, it tracks hands-free, no problems at all. Well, I should put my hands back on so I don't run into one of these trucks. It shakes when you hit bumps, because it's old and the shocks are worn. But actually, it looks like it'd be a very reliable vehicle for driving around. It's really a shame that it's all bashed in, because otherwise it's in excellent shape. Of course, fixing this is 3 times what the vehicle's worth. And really, if you just show this side of the vehicle, what a deal for $1,500. You can only see one side of the vehicle at a time. And when you consider this is a classic rear-wheel drive, you don't have any of that crappy front-wheel drive, 4-wheel drive, all-wheel drive system you have to mess with. It's just got a simple front end. And if you don't like the faded headlights, they're just plastic. You can polish them if you want. These actually wouldn't pass inspection. They're too opaque. And if you want to do a little towing, go ahead. Just don't try going in the passenger right rear door. It doesn't close all that well. But as I said, that's there. The frame's inside. It didn't touch the frame. It didn't do any serious damage. We're going to be showing off a 2000 Honda CR-V, whopping 285,000 miles on it. And as with any high mileage vehicle, the question is, when is it too high? When is it time to get rid of it? Should I drive it till the wheels fall off? How much in repair should I actually do? Well, here's the answers. Okay, it's 20 years old now. Still doesn't look too bad here. Got an old door ding. Now the plastic on the door handle's broken, but you can still get in and out, so not necessarily something you got to do right away. You see the interior? The cloth seats are still in pretty good shape. A lot of room in the back on these things. Now this one's in because it needs little maintenance. As you can see, the check engine light's on. It's running a little ragged, so I'm going to deal with that later. Now you can see the driver's window doesn't work anymore, but the passenger one does. And being a Honda, hey, the AC's still blowing cold. 20 years later and it's cold. Now the original crapper radiator's gone. Aftermarket one's been stuck in. But, you know, the windshield's got a big crack in it. And the spare tire's missing, but hey, the glass still works. They got plenty of room in the back to hold stuff. This one's got a spare rim for some reason. No tire, just a rim. Door locks, well, they don't work anymore either. And the antenna's seen better days. Plus the paint's starting to fade on the top here some. But it still goes down the road. Let's check under the hood. Double overhead cam, 4-cylinder engine. Ultra reliable. And the transmission, still the original transmission with all those hundreds of thousands of miles on it. It's a 4-speed automatic with overdrive. Back then, Honda actually made really good automatic transmissions. Later they had a few problems, but these, they're pretty bulletproof. And the engine puts out a respectable 146 horsepower for a small vehicle that's got plenty of zip. But the main thing is, it lasts. They can run and run with just minor maintenance, oil and fluid every 5,000 miles or so. Change the transmission fluid on a Honda, I say change it every 40,000 or so. There's just a little drain plug, a few quarts come out, you pump it back in. It's so easy to do. But being a Honda, always use the Honda automatic transmission fluid. Same thing with the power steering fluid. Only use the Honda power steering fluid. They all leak a little when they get older. This pump is leaking a little now, but fluid is cheap. And when you look around, you can see the cooling fans have been changed. They're made in Chinese aftermarket ones, but they work perfectly fine. They cost a lot less. That's one of the big advantages of these CR-Vs. They sold tons of Hondas. Engines used in a bunch of vehicles. A lot of interchangeable parts. There's a huge aftermarket out there, so you can get decent parts at a really good price and don't always have to go to the dealer to buy overpriced parts. Now, even though it's 20 years old, it's still got a reasonably stylish front end. It's front wheel drive with disc brakes on the front. Just ignore the dent, that's not the car's fault. And back here, hey, it's still got drums. But there's nothing wrong with drum brakes. Realize that over 90% of your braking is your front brakes. So the back brakes, they're just mainly to keep it to swaying side to side. And drums are perfectly fine. My Celica's got discs in the front and drums in the back. They don't have any problems. And the drums actually last a really long time. Now, if you do have an old car like this, you gotta decide, how long should I keep it? Well, in the case of this one, sure, it's got 280,000 miles, but the engine is still strong. The transmission's still strong, the AC still blows cold. Yeah, some of the windows don't work, the power locks don't work anymore. The vehicle still goes good. If, let's say, the engine starts to get a problem, rods are knocking, or the transmission starts really slipping and not working right, then you think, gee, do I really want to put thousands into this thing? And probably the answer would be no, you wouldn't. But this is a Honda. They probably make the best engines in the world for the money. And like I said, this particular automatic transmission, it didn't have any problems. I got a customer with one of these that's got 500,000 miles on it. The original engine and the original transmission. So they could definitely last a long time. Now, if you don't mind broken door handles, but they still get in and out, a few dings here and there, and a cracked windshield. These things actually do have an advantage in a vehicle. It's what everyone calls a beater car. You don't worry about a little ding here and there. It's already got the dings in it. The windshield's already cracked, so what if it gets another crack? It's stuff that, if you're willing to live with it as a beater car, maybe just a work car to commute in, nothing wrong with driving one of these until the wheels fall off. And speaking of wheels, let's close the hood, take it for a little spin. And yeah, typical, the ignition key's worn some. You gotta jiggle a little bunch. A lot of jiggling. There we go. Now, as we can see with the check engine light, there's a little problem, so it's not gonna run perfect, but it still goes, and it shifts fine. Give it a little gas. Still got a little get up and go to it. And yeah, when you corner, you can feel a little bit of slop, and you gotta kind of counter steer a little so it goes straight. And then when you hit bumps, hey, it's a worn vehicle. You're gonna feel them clunking around a little, and you hear various road noises, but the whirring and stuff is normal. That's just older bearings. They're not worn out yet, and you know, you hit the bumps, you hear clangs and stuff, but hey, when these things are new, they're not the greatest riding vehicles anyways. You can hear the struts banging around when you hit bumps. Hey, yeah, it's worn, but it's not unsafe. You're not gonna be driving this thing 150 miles an hour. For normal in-town stuff, it's perfectly fine. But I did have a customer a few years ago, drove her CRV that was in much worse shape than this. The control arms were all worn out, suspension was going out. She drove it from Houston to New Mexico, and she was following a guy outside of San Antonio. She said, oh, they were doing over 100 miles an hour. He said, are you insane driving that thing 100 miles an hour with all those parts worn? And she just said, oh, it shook a little bit more, but it made it back and forth with no problems. And when you consider the amount of space that these things have, you pull the seats down, you got a lot of carrying room, and sure, the console's the old dated Honda one, and you know, it's all black, but I mean, look at the seats, 20 years old, and that fabric's still in excellent shape. Even the armrest isn't worn out yet. Let's face it, it's a solid beater little SUV. Very comparable to the RAV4. They each have their pluses and their minuses. These are a little zippier than the RAV4s. They handle a little better when they're new. The RAV4s have a little bit cushier ride than these things do, but they both can last a long time. And if you can get a used one cheap that still runs, they can be great beater cars. Hey, maybe your wife doesn't want to be seen in one because pieces are breaking off it, but for your own beater car that you can take anywhere, not have to worry about somebody bashing into it or somebody stealing it because they want a hot car, it's a great incognito beater small SUV. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.